Good afternoon, I'm Daniel Miller and this is our daily news bulletin. I welcome you all to what from yesterday is going to be a regular slot here on my channel, and as described we'll have a very good look at everything that is happening in the industry as well as our community here, and we'll just go through all the different news coming to my desk as well as the messages, requests, thoughts and views that indeed have been coming in great numbers recently from many of our regular daily participants. So first of all, I would like to thank everyone for watching and listening our baby stream of News Bulletin yesterday. It was the first one in the recent series, and as described, I'm running my channel on a different schedule. It does have a different structure. Every day we'll begin with our news. Secondly, we'll have a bit of our usual introduction. Then we'll look at the new slot called DRBMiller Introducing, and that will be literally dedicated to two different types of activities. One which is looking at the new games, the indie quirky titles that are perhaps not well known but easily accessible on Xbox Game Pass or PlayStation Now services, and we'll be just helping the titles to get a greater degree of recognition, to get a bit of publicity. And also, the idea behind it is I love doing the game archaeology type of activity here online, and there's nothing better for me but discovering a game I've never heard of that appears to be absolutely amazing, and with fantastic contents and a really absolutely beautiful gameplay. So the idea is that all the games that I've been discovering over the months and years, and certainly during the last couple of years on those streaming services, I really want to share with our viewers as well. And it is one of those attempts that the Xbox team, so the regular podcasts and online presence, we're also trying to introduce, and I'll just expand on this somewhat by giving it a greater amount of time. I do apologize, really extremely cold in my local area, -6 last night, and really quite surprisingly so, considering that we are still having no snow at all, but I can certainly feel that there is some fresh air around here. Bear with me. I don't know whether my mute worked. I kept muting the sound, but if you've heard that sneeze, I do really apologize, because the button here on mute is getting a bit stiff because I keep using it a lot of times when I'm doing my broadcasts, and I guess perhaps I will need to replace it. Anyway, getting back to what I said earlier, we are going to be introducing those interesting indie titles, and yesterday we had a wonderful new game that's actually not been released yet. They introduced it during the Game Awards of Jeff Keighley's in December of 2020, last month in fact, last year, and the game's called Echo Generation. So for all of you who were here with us yesterday, I introduced it. We had about 90 minutes of gameplay, and it is a wonderful game. It actually does feel and look a bit like Fallout meeting Minecraft meeting maybe Oxenfree amongst the recent games I played, and Oxenfree is very similar in content, a game that was created by the staff previously working for Disney and Telltale's, and a combination of something that appears to be very family friendly and applicable to all generations, with perhaps some darker undertones that are more applicable to mature audiences. So principally we really enjoyed the gameplay, and I tried the demo a little while back after it was given to me by the Game Awards team. I thought really a very, very good way for us to start out with our new venture by introducing a quirky indie title that will be attracting a lot of interest and indeed getting released later or in the course of this year. So if you have a chance, just have a look at the broadcast, the playback, become a bit more familiar with all we said and the actual ins and outs of the story, and then most importantly just have a look at how you are going to be engaging with that wonderful kind of semi-post-apocalyptic world where all kinds of things are happening to two kids who are literally exploring the neighborhood. So also the greatest strength of the game is its dialogue. It's very funny, it's really very enlightening, I'm sure you'll find it to be a true delight. So anyway, we've had it yesterday, and today we'll be doing another game called Night Call, a game I discovered last year, also on Game Pass. Also one of those indie titles that came out of a French developer, and truly wonderful, as you will see today when we progress to the gameplay, which is going to be taking place just after 4 o'clock. So basically today we'll have a structure of the news bulletin first at 3 o'clock, then we'll have the introduction of Night Call, and after that it'll be followed up by regular online gameplay of Warzone. As you know, Warzone and Destiny are going to be the main big blockbusters present here on the channel every single day when I stream, and we'll be engaging with those games on consecutive days. I had some messages yesterday coming in after my broadcast, and there were about 2 or 3 people asking, well, what's the idea? Why can't you just do 2 of them on the same day within shorter streams? I can't actually. I have tried that literally throughout last year, and not throughout last year, but actually I've tried it quite a few times during last year, particularly during last quarter, and it didn't work for me. It means that if I'm doing Warzone, I'm absolutely kind of focused 300% on the mindset that the game's going to be triggering off in me, and switching to Destiny is for me impossible. So I think if you're doing it off your own back, and you know, with your mates, and quickly checking out your bits and pieces, that's one thing. But actually doing broadcast is something else. It's about being engaged with all the other participants and making sure that everything works fine, as well as being fully immersed in the actual gameplay. And those 2 games are very different, and they actually require a different mindset, albeit both are community-based games that will require a lot of individual and group participation from everyone who is watching, but still the activity is significantly different, therefore it requires a different attention, knowledge and skill. So we are going to be having 1 day of Warzone, 1 day of Destiny. Maybe sometimes you'll have 2 or 3 of Destinies or Warzones in the trot, depending on the content, because as you know, both games are getting lots of seasonal content and weekly add-ons, so sometimes we'll spend a bit more time on one of the games and then progress to the other on another day, and it may well be dependent on the requests and community interest, because as you've seen, we've had a major escalation of activity in Warzone, with our regiment being created and up to 22 players participating more or less every single day in our sessions. And that itself has been very rewarding. It's exactly how it should be with anything that is being created for maximum community effort, and therefore we'll be sometimes receiving maybe requests for squads to come on board, maybe people wanting to join us, and that will determine how frequently we will have some of the streams here on my channel, as well as perhaps it will determine their duration. But I want to stress that the DRBMiller introducing and Daily News Bulletin will be here every single day, so it's part and parcel of my regular broadcasts. The only major difference is I'm not doing them in one slot, but I'm having them in separate sections. They will be also dated, and that is what some of our community members were also requesting. They said we quite liked some of the gameplay, we really enjoyed when we watched some of the tactics, but it'd be much better if you had it clearly labeled with a date, because then if you want to cut out a clip, if we are to be sharing some of our chats, then it will be much easier for us to find this online. And I mean, it's understandable. I have very many archived streams. Every one of the streams I've done from the beginning is archived, which means they're instantly accessible, and even for myself it is almost impossible to find some of the content if somebody was requesting, do you remember when you've done such and such on that date? Well, yeah, I guess I do, but if we have got a specific date, then I'll be able to dig it up from the uploads on YouTube. But otherwise, as I was not marking it with the actual broadcasting date every single time, it did become a bit more difficult. So that's the solution, and it came out from our participants, so thank you for your suggestions. No big deal, really, just labeling every single broadcast with a day, with the date on the actual day of its release, and then once we archive it to YouTube, it's all nicely done and dusted. Also, I want to make sure that every single broadcast is immediately uploaded to YouTube, so we have a proper sequence. I did see that with some of the other ones there were issues around the upload duration hour and if you were to be, let's say, uploading 3 of them in sequence for Wednesday to Friday sessions, it was very much dependent on YouTube server access and internet speed, so sometimes they would not come up in a proper sequence because a file was maybe bigger than the other, and therefore YouTube was taking time, and therefore it didn't really upload according to the sequence which was originally intended. So these are the issues that are part and parcel of the logistics. I think anyone who does streaming will need to keep this in mind. Make sure you are very disciplined and very boundaried, which means if you have decided to be streaming within a particular schedule, stick to it and make sure that you're following exactly the same drill. So your preps need to be done way before your actual broadcasting hour. You need to post announcements on various social networking forums that will include YouTube and Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and any other that you're presently using. Make sure you have Discord fully integrated within your gaming community for any other news popping in, and telling something to your community members about the activity. Also ideal for squadding up and connecting people from all platforms. Don't forget, gaming industry is progressing towards cross-platform access on all levels, and we've just heard yesterday from one of the Xbox podcasts how, for instance, they really look forward to a full integration of some of the major blockbusters, so people could really step in from Switch to PC, and just literally swing from one to the other. And Jeff Rubinstein was saying how, for instance, he's really delighted to play one of the games with his kids, where one person will be on a console, the other on PC, and the third one on Switch, so all three of them could come in and play together without any difficulty. I think that's really wonderful. I know that some of the FPS veterans will be a bit concerned, but you will have that choice. You'll be able to switch on and off cross-platform access. So if you don't want to be participating in cross-platform, like what you've seen here with Warzone, then principally you can just simply switch it off. You'll be able to you'll be able to entertain the activity with everyone who is on your platform, most notably your PC. And if you want to be like us, basically joining forces with everyone, you'll just leave it switched on. And on and off switch is very easy to find on options, and I think that's really the very best, because there were concerns in the last couple of years for the games that indeed didn't provide that option, so it just became fully cross-platform, and there was a lot of venom vented out at particular developers. So I think this is definitely the best solution. I certainly know for myself, my streams, everything I do here, I will be always looking for full cross-platform access, because the games like Destiny, Warzone become really truly beautiful with all participants. And what's interesting is, if you're a streamer and you get a proper online discussion going here on the channel, you will really see and hear from people who are experiencing the game on various platforms the way it's actually performing. And you will have sometimes the games like PUBG performing better on some platforms than others, and these kinds of views and experiences, when shared live online, are of tremendous advantage literally to everyone, and this is what we want to be encouraging. So cross-platform access means more community-based activity, and therefore thumbs up for everyone who is participating live online. Right, so the structure, as I said, is going to be exactly the same every single day. We'll start out with our news and introductions. This is basically what we are doing at the moment, and then followed up by DRBMiller introducing. Today we'll have Nightcall, as I said. I'll tell you a lot more about the game as we progress towards that section, and then there will be our major section of Warzone as well. So that's going to be all in a nutshell for today. And so really quite excited about the new concept. I've had quite a number of messages coming in since yesterday, and I want to really respond to a few. A couple of messages were in response to my fairly in-depth description on A to Z of streaming if you are starting out, like for the beginners. And there was Sam from Newcastle asking, well, if you are providing a mature content, how can you always adhere to the family-friendly rule of Twitch, and how actually does this work on your channel? Sam watched the broadcast yesterday, but I think he's not a regular participant here, our new member. So first of all, I want to welcome Sam and thank you for joining us and being a new community participant and a dedicated gamer in our community. Well, it's quite simple, to tell you the truth, because you would have seen from particularly our Warzone sessions in recent months that we are a group of adult, mature gamers. We are not really children. We are not really, still enjoying the blossoms of our youth. And although we are very youthful in our mind, but that's just something else. And we all talk about things in a very mature way when analyzing our strategies, talking about different games, and we don't really hop on Instagram trends or the ideas like today it's really hot to be destroying the enemy with a helicopter whilst you're in a lobby and then taking many kills and creating clips, sharing them on Instagram. This is just not our jazz. We are here to talk about everything from a bit more mature viewpoint, and we also want to be able, through our discussions, to embrace everyone who is interested. So the way it works is, I run a channel that is family friendly, which means there's nothing of family unfriendly type of activity allowed in here. It's strictly prohibited. So that includes the use of swear words, any kind of potentially defamatory content, any deep, in-depth politics which could be inflammatory. I mean, you can talk about certain political issues like what's happening, the collateral of the pandemic. But if you are to be linking it to political parties, to particular stern political views, well, that is not acceptable. This is not a platform for this. And basically we talk about everything which is kind of open to the widest possible audiences. So anybody who perhaps knows nothing about video gaming will listen to 15-20 minutes of our discussions and will feel so drawn to what we said that they'll try to find out really what all this is about. What's this hoo-ha really based on? And get in and enjoy all the hustle and bustle of this online video gaming activity. So that's the idea. The idea is that you present it in a very amicable, very friendly, very civilized format. Even if you're presenting games which perhaps sometimes will have some unfriendly things said within the actual content. And this is what we did adhere to, and it worked perfectly. I was very pleased because our squad mates and people who are in the regiment know this, and they'll subscribe to this, and they find that to be really delightful because, first of all, we are being quite mature and professional about organizing tactics and strategies in a game that actually requires this, and that itself is sometimes fundamental for the overall progression. Because don't forget, if you are an FPS gamer and you're incredibly emotional or prone to high anxiety levels or excitements and all sorts, that will be interfering with your performance. It's a bit like when you watch top football teams losing 2-0 at home and then they turn it within the last 10 minutes into 4-2 and they win the match. What's the reason for that? Well, they're not emotional. They just take it on the chin, they carry on, it's a job, and they will want to make sure that they do always the very best. Anyone who is overly emotional, as you've seen on football pitch, we will get people doing silly things that will basically get them red cards, and therefore they will deplete their own team of the strength which was required for a particular effort, and that will not work out to their advantage in due course. So it's very important to kind of remove yourself from that degree of emotional engagement if you are a competitive gamer. This was a question also coming in from one of other community participants. I apologize, I didn't really single you out, because he said he found lots of PvP games really highly exciting, and then sometimes if he played them later in the day he'd find it difficult to sleep and all this. So let me just see who wrote this. Joseph. Hello Joseph. Joseph is from North Cumberland, and thank you for sending this message. Thank you for bringing it to our attention. I actually talked quite a lot about that here on my channel, but obviously it would have been said during my broadcast. I personally, as a gamer and somebody who plays games very frequently for extensive amounts of hours, and quite a variety of games, they include from puzzlers, RPGs, FPS, all sorts, and I really have a rule, and the rule is that I do not want to be playing games later in the day. So for me, really, the cutoff hour is somewhere between 8 and 9 o'clock p.m. Right? And the reason for that is very simple. If I'm to be doing Warzone, Warzone is actually not that hectic although there's a lot of activity in there. It could get very hot if you're in certain battles. But if you're doing PUBG, or if you were doing, no, actually it's not a good idea, not a good example. If you're doing hyperspace, if you're doing Apex, these are, or even Call of Duty Mobile, these are the games with very small maps, and the maps are really very, very tight, and they require a lot of kind of jumping, running, and speed, basically. So when you are doing these games, then your overall experience will be heightened. You will feel greatly stimulated, and specifically if you are sitting close to the screen, if you're jumping, a lot within the game, you will find yourself somewhat accelerated with your mind. Your central nervous system will be affected by flashing lights, by the overall activity. And what's interesting, I spent some time looking at how, for instance, the FPS and particularly the hectic ones affect the overall neurological activity within our body. And it's interesting because there has been a study done a few years back in the US where they indicated that this is quite sort of the way people get affected is based on their own genetic components and their own overall CNS way of functioning. So it's not really possible to determine that everybody will have same effect. I did talk to quite a number of gamers here who play FPS and PvP as it goes quite late at night, and they find it to be incredibly soothing for them in order to fall asleep. Well, I find that really truly remarkable, because for myself it has a completely different effect on my brain. I find it to be really kind of like a major stimulant, where I could feel if I had been drinking many cups of coffees, I could not sleep afterwards and I'd be awake for hours and hours. So you could see it is dependent on how our body is soaking up the information, and most importantly how we react to the sensory experience of visuals, flashing lights, quick motion, sounds, everything else. So certainly they did discover that overall, if you are playing FPS games and if you are entertaining that degree of kind of PvP activity, you are going to be constantly experiencing some degree of mobility. The characters are constantly moving, and in addition to the characters moving, it's the pixels, it's the overall technology that you have ahead of you. I think it may work somewhat differently today with some of the most advanced screens that we have available, but previously you would have slightly pixelated imagery, and the pixels were also in motion. So you got pixels moving as well as the images moving, and it's the overall activity of light which is stimulating your central nervous system. And therefore, particularly if you're seated, you may find that your muscles become a bit erratic, a bit twitchy. You feel extra activity, you feel that there's like an extra energy racing through your veins, and for some people could be quite severe. I did read reports of those people who were, for instance, experiencing severe twitching, and sometimes even amongst children. And there was another study, in fact, done in the US, which was dedicated to the analysis of how children aged 6 to 12 are being affected by certain types of video games. And there were, not many, but there were some examples where children became very, very hyperactive and very twitchy. And that's not the case really with the vast majority. So you could see everyone is being affected in a different way. And I think it needs to be stressed that a lot of that activity would have been connected to, no breaks and somebody doing it all the time. And we've seen, certainly in recent years, that sometimes parents are very busy that would just give a child a particular device, be it a console or a mobile phone, in order to hammer a game for many, many hours just to keep occupied. And that's not really a good way of doing it, because if you're doing it for too long, if you're not having breaks, if you're overly immersed in the activity, it could have that sort of effect. To summarize, the motion that's happening out on the screen and the flashing lights are stimulating the body and the nervous system, telling you that you need to be responding to that degree of motion, and that itself in response could cause some degree of twitchiness within your muscular system. And I certainly can say I did experience that myself a few times. I'm very sensitive to these kinds of stimuli, and therefore I very carefully monitor how I play games and what time of the day and all sorts. But most importantly, it is for myself fundamental that for the FPS games, I'm always playing them in a standing position. So when I'm doing them in a standing position, I'm moving around a bit, and the body and the overall experience is of slight motion in response to what's happening on the screen, and that itself then causes me almost no difficulties at all. But if I was to do, let's say, Destiny or the Crucible in particular in a seated position, if I was to be sitting quite close to the screen, then I would, feel quite twitchy afterwards. And these are the results of my own kind of self-assessment, and I can certainly tell you that I have a selection of rules, so I will always want to be playing PvP and FPS games early in the day. So that's the bottom line. The latest for me will be around between 8 and 9 o'clock PM, so I'll still have about 3 or 4 hours to wind down, go out for a walk, maybe watch a film, eat something, so the body would be flexibly adapting to all the other activities. Never ever do I play a game, particularly if we were talking about hectic FPS games, and then go to bed afterwards. Well, that's just a non-starter for me. There's going to be no sleep, and I'll be like really very badly affected by it. So thanks very much to our friends from Cumbria who was raising this question. So I would just say boundaried gaming is certainly a way forward, and the developers and people who work in gaming industry will tell you we are not creating the games in order for people to feel completely addicted to them and play 6, 10, 12 hours in a trot without any breaks. It's just not the way it should be. Games have been created for entertainment, for overall participation of many people from worldwide, particularly today with in-game comms, in order to have a lot of fun, to feel detached from everyday ills, to connect and share their thoughts and views in addition to the actual gaming. And you've seen many times on my streams, and also if you watch other people on Twitch who stream PUBG and other competitive shooters, you will get squads and teams talking a lot in the lobby. They'll have a match and then they'll talk a lot, and then they'll have a match and they'll talk a lot. Rarely will you see somebody just consistently hammering. I mean, you get sometimes people who are under sponsorship schemes and they've got a contractual obligation to be playing that many matches per day and all this, but it's a different ball game altogether. I mean, if you're on a sponsorship, you're running it as a business. It's it's just professional kind of constraints that will come up, similar to what you have with footballers, with quarantining and having a particular diet. A footballer might fancy really eating a particular massive big meal, greasy spoon, steaks, chocolates or whatever, but the people who are around this particular person will not allow him to do that because of the requirements for their performance if they play for Real Madrid or from Liverpool, for the big clubs. And there will be a lot more of that assistance coming from all sides in order to make sure that they're adhering to the routine, which will basically enable them to be performing in the zone. Right? Another question, just remembered it now. We had John from I think I have to look through my notes a bit, beg your pardon. Yeah, he's from Mississippi, and he said, well, I'm really quite curious to hear the idea that people are doing it in the zone, and what's actually in the zone. What does this really mean? Well, I can certainly tell you, in the zone is a term that was coined by a writer and trader in the US called Mark Douglas. And what he meant, he wrote some fantastic books on psychology of trading, but actually the books are not about trading, they're about the human psychology, the way people react to certain situations. And as a person who studied psychoanalysis and psychology and psychiatry over many years, I have a very good insight and a very, very good knowledge on all that is connected to the field. But I was amazed with the type of exploratory attitude that he displayed from the beginning, and the number of people who participated in his studies, and how easily and clearly he laid out the principles through which he realized what are the likely pitfalls if you are highly excitable and you get into the world of financial trading, the financial markets trading. And in the zone means that every single person who's doing a particular activity that requires attention, time, an arduous activity, right? The activity that require a lot of dedication, a lot of focus, will have only a limited number of hours per day, but they're operating to the best of their abilities. Okay, so that's applicable to technology, to sports, to humanities, to science, to any discipline, to medicine. You will only have that many hours a day when you're operating at the very best of your capacity. For some people, this could be stretched to 6 to 8 hours. For some people, maybe 3 or 4. That depends on the way their biology works. So when we talk about trading in the zone or working in the zone, we are really looking at the very best part of any day, where you are at the very best of your capacities, right? So that means physical, biological. So you're well rested, you're well nourished, you had enough sleep, you are first of all ready to engage with everything that is before you. On a biological, physical level, you're absolutely tip-top, right? You might have exercised like myself every single day in the morning, and you feel ready to really crack on with everything else. Then secondly, your mind appears to be very, very clear. You're absolutely focused. It means that if you are looking at adding up figures or reading certain articles, you'll just race through that. There'll be no need to be rereading or re-examining several times. So that is what you need to establish literally within your day. You need to find out what is the very best part of a day where you can be operating to the very best of your abilities. That will be different from person to person. Give you my own example. At times, I had to be getting up at 4 o'clock in the morning to start my day at 6. Many reasons as to why that was. That was probably one of the most hated periods of my life. I absolutely detested it. For me, getting up that early and having a disturbed night's sleep is a non-starter for the whole day, right? So it's not the way I want to be operating, and there were reasons as to why I had to do it for a little while. But if I look at my schedule, the best time for me when I'm really operating in the zone is after 11 o'clock, right? So from 11 to about 7, 8 in the evening, right? So that would be my in the zone period. And if we were to be specific, I'd say probably from 11 to 7 is the very best. If I start out a bit later, let's say if I start at 1 o'clock, then 1 to 10 will be fine. And altogether I'll be operating quite well on any afternoon and early evening. So from midday to about 9 or 10 in the evening is basically the time when I'm operating to the best of my abilities. So if I'm to be kind of forcing myself to do difficult things 7 o'clock in the morning, that is not going to work. I'm not going to be in the zone. I'll spend a lot more time doing some menial, pedestrian, mundane tasks, and it just will not be worth it. And if I do everything after 11 o'clock midday, I can just race through it. So if you're looking at your own gaming, right, you want to be getting to the level where you are an experienced esports competitor, right? Well, you won't be able to get there overnight to start with. You need to spend a lot of time examining ins and outs of it and finding out how you are going to be basically honing up skills and finding the best ways through which you are going to be succeeding, winning matches, playing together with others, and you have to decide also, do you want to be a squad mate? Do you want to be a solo player? What kind of game? So lots of considerations in there. What you decide at the beginning will have to be tied to your personality. So if you are a person who is an absolute kind of team player, don't go to Warzone and play solo. It's not a good idea, right? Because it's going to go against the grain of your character. What you do online needs to mirror your character. I talked to a colleague yesterday who's also a professional from the field of psychology, and he was just asking me about all the big hoo-ha related to video gaming, and he said, well, I can't really understand that 4 billion people are engaged in video gaming every single day when we are facing a pandemic and we have so many threats arising on every single level. And I said, well, it's not surprising, because people need respite, and jumping in and doing video gaming is not just something that will be giving you an escape into the fantasy world. You will have the means to which you'll connect with others and talk about everything, meet new friends. So think of it as Facebook, Twitter, Instagram combined in a live forum where people according to their interest can really get together and basically discuss everything that they love doing. And that gives them an extra stimuli. They'll come back again, they'll meet new people, and they'll carry on with the discussion, set up their own communities if they have time. And it's just a very, very wonderful way through which you actually communicate on very many different levels. And he was kind of considering and wondering as to why that was, and not really fully in tune. But coming back to this, what I wanted to say was the way you are going to be entering the arena will have to be based on the way you are. So coming back to our discussion, well, my discussion with him, I just said to him, well, come and watch some of the Warzone sessions that we have here, and have a look at the activity, the way people are, the way they behave, and particularly watch the new participants, because if you have a squad with, let's say, 2 regulars and 2 newbies, you are going to be able to see how the newbies actually behave. And if you're looking at the behavior within the arena, within the game itself, you will see very quickly, that means in no time, what kinds of people they actually are. Are they selfish? Are they people who are likely to be helping others? Are those people interested in doing a major team effort, or they're just completely dedicated to their own venture? And so some of the main aspects and streaks of that person's character will come across quite quickly if you are under pressure in there, if you're in a situation where you require maximum team effort, and you will learn so much about those people straight away. So that's the answer. The answer is that gives you the most important opportunity to learn what the other people are like, and you can engage with them through online activity, and you can get to know them so well. That's the reason why we had so many streamers and gamers finding very good lifelong friends and partners online, because they really kind of got to know them so well and so quickly. And actually the way they got to know them was very, very close to the way they are in real life. And let's not forget, if you meet somebody in a pub or elsewhere, you will not be able to find out straight away what they're going to be like in a group situation. And if you're doing Warzone, if you're doing Destiny, or if you're doing any other game that requires this maximum team effort, you will find about that person and various sides of the character rather swiftly, and it will work to your advantage. And very frequently you'll find that the way they come across, I would say almost in 99.9% of cases, the way they behave within the arena will be identical to the way they are in real life. And I give you an example. I remember watching that wonderful documentary on Halo, which was released as I think part of it was part of Gears of War Special Edition. In fact, I think it was. I can't actually. Well, doesn't matter. It was part of what? No, actually, I'm giving you completely wrong information. I watched several documentaries which were kind of connected through Bill Gates and Microsoft, and I think this is how I got the information somewhat wrong. Anyway, it was a documentary on Halo community. And 10 years later, after the game was launched, was in operation, obviously, literally throughout the decade, the participants of the original Halo community on the first Xbox console, they were going to be meeting for the first time in real life, and that really comprised people from all over the planet. There were people from Europe, from Asia, from North America, from Australia, and they organized this major party. I think it was in California. And loads of participants, up to about 100, came there, and all of them were in separate groups, in clans, and they played together for many years, but they never met in real life. And don't forget, lots of people in those days, this would have been in the noughties, didn't use video camera, and they didn't know exactly what the other guys looked like, and but they got to know each other through the actual in-game PvP activity, and they played every single day, sometimes for up to 4 or 5 hours a day. It was astonishing. It was astonishing to watch that documentary, because when they met for the first time in real life, they were astonished, right, to find out that the guys whom they spent so much time with were exactly the same, the way they experienced them within the actual in-game activity. It didn't matter what they looked like, but the character, their persona, all of the elements of all the elements of the personality were present there immediately, and they were the best of friends as always. So there was absolutely no discrepancy or difference, and I think that tells you something. That tells you that video gaming is giving us this wonderful opportunity to get to know what people are like, and it's down to you really to approach it in a way which suits you the best. But certainly for myself, I met very many people during the last what is it now, more than 3 years since I started out on this channel, and the experience has been absolutely delightful, and honestly I can just most highly recommend it to everyone. And tailor the channel according to your own preference, do things which you like doing the best, you know, all these kinds of things which you'll have to decide from the beginning. But coming back to our friend who was asking about the competitive gaming and gaming in the zone, what's important is you first of all need to decide on how you want to be progressing. Excuse me. I apologize, I had to get my voice back. Friend was asking about what's the best way to kind of raise the bar to get to the level where you feel that you are gaming in the zone. First of all, make sure you do like a proper self-assessment, the way you are as a person. That's the first thing. When do you operate the best in the course of the day? Are you disciplined? Do you adhere to a structure? Do you run a schedule every single day? Do you have boundaries? Is it very easy for you to start out on a particular activity and then leave within the boundaried rules? These are the questions you can ask yourself, because basically in order to be a successful professional in any discipline, which includes esports gamers, you will need to have first of all dedication, determination, stamina, and most importantly discipline. Without discipline, nothing will work. Right? So it's like learning, like mastering a particular skill, irrespective of what the skill is. You will have to be dedicated, you will have to persist, you have to persevere, you need to, I always say, you need to keep banging on all doors. Yeah, you do need to keep banging on your doors, and you need to persevere. You must not be disappointed if things don't work out on the first run. And then you look at what makes you feel good, like for instance, getting up early, getting up late. Gaming at a particular time of a day, eating particular food which is going to give you a lot of energy, or do you want to feel healthy? Do you want to eat like properly cooked bioorganic food? You want to have lots of fruit and veg, or do you want to be using greasy spoons and burgers and pizzas which are kind of poorly and cheaply made? You need to take a decision on how you want to be running your life in order to get to that in the zone level. And what's particularly good is if you organize your life accordingly, you'll find that once you're reaching that in the zone with your competitive gameplay, you can apply that to any other area of your life. And incidentally, I listened to a very good podcast yesterday by Major Nelson and Jeff Rubinstein on Major Nelson's YouTube channel, and it was dedicated to the use of gamers' chairs. Right? So there was a section in the podcast where they brought in the developer from one of the biggest companies in the US that are producing those chairs for gamers, and it was absolutely and truly fascinating. You think, well, talking about a chair, it's not going to be particularly interesting, but the way he came across, the way that he described everything around this chair was absolutely astonishing. And I've got to say that the first thing he said, the way we approach esports gamers is like we approach athletes. The way we approach esports gamers is the same as if we were approaching athletes. So what does that tell you? The person who does esports gaming is an athlete. They will need to be using their biological drives, their body, in order to deliver. And they said creating a chair that's producing that degree of bioorganic balance is incredibly difficult. It needs to be very closely tied in with medical science, with orthopedic consultants and everyone else who can advise. And just went into in-depth analysis as to why it is very important for your body to feel comfortable when you are delivering that degree of esports performance live. And I was fascinated because I know for myself that having a specific type of chair that keeps my balance absolutely on an even keel is fundamental, not just for gaming. Most of the times I'm actually, playing games in a standing position, but for typing, for doing academic research, anything that requires many hours when you are being seated and or in a seated position, it's absolutely fundamental. So just remember, they're producing very expensive gamers chairs and they're approaching the customers as if they were athletes, and the customers are video in esports gamers. So if you are considering how to get to that degree of expertise, you have got to approach the entire activity as if you were a top sports athlete, right? So that requires regular training, regular activities where you warm up, requires just the entire way of life needs to be adjusted. I'll give an example. What I do. I'm not a competitive esports gamer, but obviously run channels in here, and I have a similar sort of discipline established. But the first thing I do is when I wake up is I exercise. So I have my regular morning drill of exercise, right? I've got to do that for my health because I suffered a disability after contracting a virus similar to COVID 13 years ago, and I've got to make sure that my body is fully warmed up and fully enabled. And it's become a regular routine. I mean, always exercise in the morning, but it's become even more so of a necessity for me every single day, and also before going to bed. So start out with exercises, right? So standing exercises, the usual military drill. After that, I have a very healthy breakfast. I eat always 2 different types of mueslis mixed together with fruit. So that's my usual breakfast every single day. And it's substantial, it's very nourishing, and it wakes me up. I also drink some herb tea with grapefruit. Sometimes I spice it up with ginger. Ginger is a strong stimulant. If you put a couple of bits of ginger root in there, it'll wake you up. It'll literally raise your awareness. It's a much better, much more healthier way of getting awake than drinking coffee. I would actually advise you against drinking coffee. Coffee is a very strong stimulant that stays within your bloodstream for about 3 or 4 days and builds up also within your body, which means you may find yourself being deeply affected by it in a longer run. And then secondly, it dehydrates, and that is the worst effect of coffee, in addition to obviously that overall stimulation. As it keeps dehydrating you, you will find yourself feeling a bit dizzy, your skin will look differently, etc., etc. So, people think if you're drinking liquid, it's automatically going to be giving you hydration. Well, that's not the case with caffeinated drinks. Just remember that. Drinking Coca-Cola or drinking coffee is going to do exactly the opposite. So healthy drinks, healthy breakfast. After that, I do all the research on the news. I get lots of news coming in overnight, so there's a lot to get through, and that's both for my film dialogue and for gaming dialogue hubs here online. So once I've gone through it, I do postings of the news on Twitter, and that includes both hubs. And then after that, I'm looking at the plan, the plan of my day, what I will be doing. So if I'm streaming, I'll be looking at what structure I'll have in there, what kinds of things I'll say, and I'll get fully ready for the actual schedule. So the schedule will be delivered as planned. We'll have a limited number of hours which are dedicated to a particular game, and we'll always deliver that within those parameters. So it's absolute discipline. If I want to be achieving something with my community, we've got to be trying do that within those hours. If we have not achieved it by, let's say, 5 o'clock p.m., we're not going to be stretching it until 10 p.m. in order to do it. We actually didn't get it. We didn't succeed on that day, and therefore we'll leave it for another day where our batteries are recharged, but we are yet again back in the zone. So that's very important. So then later in the day, I'll go out for first of all, I have my dinner. Usually dinner is between 4:30 and 5:30 p.m. Not during the pandemic times, but during the normal days. After that, I'll go for a lengthy walk, which means I'll have a lot of fresh air in a local park or a local nature reserve. And after that, I'll come back and I'll do some work on film, and maybe watch some films, write on films, and then when it comes to about midnight, it'll be the best time for me to go to bed. Before going to bed, I exercise in order to enable better circulation during my sleep, and it's not really a lot of exercises, but like 15 minutes of certain stretches and shoulder, neck and head exercises that really make sure that I don't wake up with any kind of sprains and pains. So that's the structure. that's what I do, in order to deliver everything in the zone. And as you could see, there's a lot of planning involved, but initially you'll have to write it down on paper, and then later you'll be simply looking at a variety of different means to which you'll just accept it as if it was just your second nature, like your drill. You remember it all, you don't have to write it down anymore. But initially keep it on paper, make sure you're following the list, and you need to adhere to that list. So if you find, for instance, that you decided on a schedule when you will be playing with your mates, let's say 9 in the morning to 3 in the afternoon, and that turns out to be a bit difficult within the first couple of hours, then change the schedule. Go from 11 to 6, 11 to 5. Find the time where you operate at the very best of your abilities, and then hammer it at that time. And when you feel that you're getting too tired, don't push it. There's no need. You've seen footballers getting injuries if they got too tired. Why is that somebody is being taken off the pitch? Because obviously if they're too tired, they're more prone to injuries. It's just like the overall mechanism that you've seen in with athletes and sportsmen overall can be applied to video gaming as well. And don't forget, we are talking today about esports competitors, and we have people who are fully engaged as participants in what is seen as a new medium, new arena of esports, and therefore I feel every participant needs to be treated accordingly. They've got to have exactly the same type of routine, and they need to really adhere to certain schedules, and most importantly establish their own personal discipline, which will be based on their character. So hope I've given you some ideas. Thank you to all who are asking these questions. As I said, we had our friend from Cumbria, we had our friend from Newcastle, and our US community member from Missouri. Thank you very much for your messages, and really grateful for your thoughts and views. And I'm still hoping that you guys will be watching my broadcast in this delivered in this new format, and I look forward to your feedback on this as well, whether you're finding it more useful or more interesting, whether that is exactly what you want to see. And just please do not hesitate to ping me a message either through DMs or Twitch or Gmail or anywhere else really. I'll be always very glad to respond immediately and discuss your messages here live online. Right, so that's all about our community. We've had 59 minutes of community-based content. I will thank you to all of our community members for sending us the questions and asking and responding really to some of the things I said in my yesterday's baby stream of well, it's not really a baby stream. We already had news bulletins in the past, but yeah, it's a baby stream within this new winter season of 2021. And very grateful to everyone who was basically taking time to write and ask questions, provide us with our community support. And as you know, the channels and Twitch activity is all about our communities, and if there's no community, then what's the point? And I'm just feeling very blessed and privileged to have generated a community of very dedicated gamers and veterans of several games that include Destiny, Warzone, and many others. And it's been truly wonderful to be able to share experiences and to get fully engaged with all that everybody had to say. And just to end my section on community contribution, really today I want to say you can make it well, you can basically create the channel and the activity according to your own personality. So you'll have people who are very chatty and very sociable, and therefore you'll find that the communities will be growing rapidly if they engage with everyone. And that will include not just talking live online here, but it will be also part and parcel of activities on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and particularly some of the younger streamers who have also a lot of time. They'll be doing everything at once, and therefore you can see that the communities will be rapidly accelerating, growing. Frequently the communities will be tied to somebody's age and somebody's niche area of interest, and it's just purely normal and natural. That's the way the vast variety of communities worldwide really operate. in any other context. And make sure that you're as natural as possible, that you feel very comfortable with all you do. You may need to practice a bit initially with some test streams, and maybe asking a few friends and other people to watch you, provide you with feedback. But don't forget, the feedback you get from randoms is always a lot more valuable than the feedback from friends and family, because friends and family know you and they will be biased, and therefore the feedback may not be 100% accurate, maybe overly positive when it shouldn't be, or the other way around. So I much advise everyone to do it the other way. Do it with people who you do not know. And I mean, just think of all the well-known musicians and performers. They will tell you playing in our own home city is always the most difficult thing to do, because we know friends, family, everyone else who are going to be there, and they're going to be watching, and I know them personally, and that's really tricky because they'll always have something to say. And the pressure they feel when performing at the front of the well-known domestic audience or their friends and family is always the most difficult, which is a bit strange, isn't it? You think, you feel more comfortable saying something within your family environment than doing it at the front of randoms, but that's just the way it is. So remember that if you are to be re-evaluating your channel, be yourself, be disciplined, be dedicated, provide content that is as interesting as possible, and also make sure that any participant coming in to your live forum, the Talk Live Online, is subscribing to your channel rules, and that you provide together a content which is first of all chatty and dynamic and a bit mind-boggling, stimulating some degree of curiosity where people could find out perhaps more by questioning you. It needs to be always inclusive and fully inviting, so you can bring in people from everywhere. And just crack on, and then find out for yourself whether you like it or not, whether you reap the rewards. And do not get disappointed with kind of early difficulties or early results, because it will take you a long while to build an online community that will be I guess exactly as you kind of wanted it to be. And sometimes it will depend on lots of different factors that have got nothing to do with you. So spend time, plan, persevere, and build. And then 6 months later you'll see your community has grown, and 2 or 3 years later you may be laughing. You may be just already completely overjoyed with everything you experienced. And if you're more interested in the tips, go back to the yesterday's news bulletin. I talked quite a lot about ins and outs of streaming, and it was also in response to several messages that came from our junior participants here. So it's an add-on. Today we talked about specific issues that were raised by our community members since yesterday. So we are going to be looking at all that's been happening in the industry overnight. And as you know, I have all of my news published on my Twitter. So everyone here should really follow my Twitter if you are interested in the industry news. But in here, we will be looking at a selection. We'll expand on some of that and tell you a bit more. And just like I said earlier, the news bulletin is very much connected to both sides, what happens in the industry and what happens within our community. So fortunately, yesterday and today we had lots of questions coming in from the community, so we spent more time looking at our people here on the channel and their requests, and maybe less so to do with what's been happening out there in the world. So I'll try to balance it out today with a selection of the news. First of all, if you are looking at my postings on Twitter, you'll see that the new concept is well introduced in there. And then we have some very interesting news coming in from True Achievements. They said that we can dive into the 2020 Xbox leaderboards to see where you placed. Well, we've had on Xbox a kind of a mini competition where people had to be reaching a certain level with game score, reaching 10, 20,000 or so. I've not really participated. Obviously, I would have done had I not been a streamer, because if you're a streamer, you're not looking at achievements, you're looking at the overall community participation. And if you want to be chasing gamer score, you need to play lots and lots of games. The best way to do it is by subscribing to Game Pass. You can try out loads of games in there, up to I think 170 at the moment, and you know, can just literally hammer some of the games in order to get achievements. Some games give you lots of them, and you can research this online, and then obviously you will be able to succeed with some of the competitions. If you are reaching the tops, you will get quite a few rewards. They include gifts, they include sweepstakes, as well as the Microsoft points. I always swap my Microsoft points for regular subscription, my ultimate subscription to Xbox services, and therefore I don't have to pay then for that particular month. So keep it in mind if you are on Xbox. We had some news coming from Kotaku indicating that the Medium has the hardware to match its ambition. Medium is a very, very ambitious horror game, and we have seen several jingles and introductions coming our way during the last couple of months, and most importantly they introduced it as part of the Game Awards, and also with the new console launch coming from Xbox. So I'm very, very interested to see how this is going to be developing. It does have an interesting concept where you're entering two different worlds, the real world and the one which is, I believe, product of somebody's imagination, you know, the evil world. And you are playing the character consecutively in both of these worlds. It looked really quite interesting. It looked a bit tricky, I've got to say, but as we've seen with CD Projekt Red, based in Poland, this is another company coming from the same country, and they're called Bulletin. And certainly what they said and what they presented was very, very curious, but we've heard that perhaps the tech was not as advanced presently in order to suffice some of the ideas. And basically the story is about a psychic, about a person who is entering a murder investigation, and they'll use their powers in order to solve a crime. And they also said that it's about breaking down players' preconceived notions about the world. Well, let's find out. It'll be very interesting. I mean, as I said, I've really enjoyed the developer diaries so far. They said the game is about points of view, and the lead designer Wojciech Pieko said this, and he gave a small interview to Kotaku as well in response, and he said nothing is black and white, nothing is simple. At its heart, the medium is about thinking for yourself and finding the best perspective to judge something. Hopefully after finishing the game, somebody will think before judging someone because of something they did. The real question is why he or she did it, right? So it's basically questioning your motivation, the reasons as to why you committed a certain act. And that's similar to what we have with games coming from Quantic Dream. Anyone familiar with Heavy Rain, with Detroit, with Beyond Two Souls will tell you that's basically the most important part of the gameplay that they offered. So they also said, let me see. It's a lengthy description of the story. We're not going to go into this at the moment. They talked that Medium is quite different than anything the studio released from the past, and they had to learn new skills and techniques, and also they really had to be applying some new tech in order to deliver the visuals which were as intended. And they said 2017's Observer gave the studio experience with investigation-style gameplay and dialogue choices, and 2019's Blair Witch taught them how to implement an AI companion. So these are all very, very interesting concepts that the studio has been developing. You will be familiar with Observer. This game is very similar to Blade Runner, and you have Rutger Hauer, who was in Blade Runner, the original film, and he's the lead character in the game. Blair Witch, obviously based on the film from the 90s. And so, well, it's very interesting. If you are wanting to find out more about the medium and the tech that it needs to be using, and all about the story, just head to my Twitter and you'll get that Kotaku story right at the top. We also have some interesting news coming out of the developer with there's 14 minutes of the first true Xbox Series X exclusive for the same game, and it's actually Paul Tassi. He is a writer for Forbes, who is presently advertising it. So if you go to his article, which is on Forbes, and also you can access it on my Twitter, he is telling us all about this exclusive clip, which I think looks very, very exciting. And he said while Halo Infinite was supposed to be the big Xbox Series X exclusive for fall 2020, Bulletin's The Medium was also delayed out of the year, although it will be arriving a lot sooner. Well, the delay was caused by some of the technical problems as mentioned, and this is the first real Xbox Series X new console exclusive. It's going to be the first game proprietary to the new console, and it will be out towards the end of this month, penciling it for January the 28th. And so they released 14 minutes of footage, and you can really see what it's like. And he felt, Paul Tassi, that it was a bit like a blend of Silent Hill and Alan Wake, but he said that we need to find out whether the new game will surpass the other two masterpieces. And certainly from what I've seen, it does have the aura of the two, but also I'd like to really elaborate. I don't feel that visually the game is at all resemblant to the other two games he mentioned. It's just the aura. It's the aura of Supernatural, but visually the game looks very original, and you will see that straight away if you watch the clip. So if you're interested, just have a look at the clip. It is on my Twitter. So that is the 14 minutes of the first true Xbox Series exclusive, The Medium. We have some news coming out of Xbox, and they will have quite a number of games entering the Game Pass streaming services. We'll have Football PES 2021 for cloud and console. We'll have The Little Acre cloud and console, Torchlight 3 cloud and console, Injustice 2 cloud and console and PC. We'll have what are those? Y2K, a Poet Modern RPG, that will be for PC. What Remains of Edith Finch, already accessible on console, is being made accessible for PCs. Neoverse for PCs, and that's it. So that is 7 new games coming out this week on Xbox Game Pass. Before the Christmas they released 17 new games on Game Pass, and you will be familiar with the inclusion of EA Play services that brought us extra 60, and there's a rumor at the moment on Ubisoft Plus also being introduced, so that will be extra 50 or 60 games on top of everything else. And you know, the number of games, the list is just simply growing and ascending, and we really have very little time to go through everything. But our section that is to follow, DRBMiller introducing, will be solely dedicated to these games. Every single day we'll be introducing one with some gameplay and some descriptions, and that is obviously what I really treasure. It will be an opportunity both for myself to become familiar with some of those, as well as everyone in our community. So let's have a look. What games were the best-selling Steam titles of 2020? I'm quite curious. What were they? Valve reveals the top-selling games of 2020 on Steam. So what were they? Let's see. Platinum, Among Us. Well, you could see Among Us is very, very, very popular at the moment, and I'm delighted because this is an indie game done by 3 people who set up their own development firm, and it did take about 3 years to get it to this level, but they won literally loads of awards this year, and as they went cross-platform, it's taken literally the entire world by storm. So absolutely highly recommended. Among Us also coming to Game Pass very, very soon. Counter-Strike Go, Cyberpunk 2077, Destiny 2, Doom Eternal, Dota 2, Fall Guys, Monster Hunter World, PUBG, Rainbow Six Siege, Red Dead Redemption. So these are the games that sold the best on the Platinum level. Amongst all of these, Among Us is the greatest surprise. I've got to say, to have a quirky, small, multiplayer indie game wrestling with Red Dead, Rainbow Siege, Destiny, Doom Eternal, Cyberpunk is absolutely astonishing. But it's happening, and I will have to research on the ascendancy of the game. You know, what really helped the game to reach this level. first and foremost, it's the content, it's the wonderful gameplay, but you know, they had to have something else that was pushing the game forward. So I need to research this, and you know, I'll get back to you on it. Gold is Ark, Baldur's Gate, Borderlands 3, Civilization 6, Crusader Kings 3, Dead by Daylight, Halo the Master Chief Collection, Mountain Blade, Bannerlord, Phantasmaphobia, Sea of Thieves, The Elder Scrolls Online, and Warframe. So that's sounding really amazing. And again, no surprises in there. I think for myself, this is all pretty much as expected. All the games are indeed very, very popular on PCs. And for me, if there's one game I want to really kind of most highly recommend to everyone, it's the game that everybody, you know, those dedicated PC players was expecting for more than a decade. And that's the Master Chief Collection, Halo of course, and it does include Halo 4. It's a recent edition. It's been reworked, and you have all these different modes. And if you are the original Halo gamer who played the game on the original console, you will be able, just by click on one button, switch from the remastered to the old mode. So it depends on your preference. You can redo it the old way, or you can simply crack on with a beautifully remastered version. I have to say, very, very similar to Destiny 1, and I played it and I really loved it. But the most important thing in there, which they introduced, and that's something that the Halo veterans were asking for many years, is that you are, if you are entering the world of Halo on your PC, you are going to be able to connect with your old Halo buddies. So all the gamer tags, all the usernames and everything else is going to be there. So you can just simply hit them up with a message and squad up after 10-15 years yet again for another battle. So that's incredible. So if I'm to be literally selecting one game that would be literally tailored to my taste, well, that's certainly Halo the Master Chief Collection. Alright, so these are the recommendations that came our way from Valve. So where to find Ciri from The Witcher 3 in Cyberpunk? Well, let's find out. IGN are telling us that there is a way. So we hear that lots of people have been searching. What's going on in here? Hang on. They've been searching for the Witcher Ciri in the game from day one, and something they've spotted a fairly sneaky reference to the character in one of the game's endings. So it looks like, as pointed out on Nintendo Smash, the endgame quest all along the Watchtower. So it's the end quest. Begins with V waking up on top of the Badlands Dam and seeing a bird perch on the open car window. That bird looks and sounds like a barn swallow in the world of The Witcher. Swallow is the Elvish English translation of Ziriel, from which Ciri's name derives, and is the name of the silver sword given to her by Geralt in The Witcher 3. Well, that's very interesting. I'm not going to be reading it any further because that might be giving you spoilers, but if you are a fan of The Witcher series, evidently it's coming from the same developer, Cyberpunk 2077. You will have some references, and they're speculating whether this is just the way through which Ciri will be found. We've heard from Bungie today that Destiny 2's next patch will remove Dragonfly from all cold front guns to prevent bugged weapon interactions. It's been really of concern to many people, and that is going to be gone. So that's the news from Bungie. Star Wars Squadrons adding High Republic customization item. So if you want to find out more, you need to access this posting on my Twitter. And they said that they will be having it rolled out of the new High Republic content. So a whole new expansion to the Star Wars universe has recently been announced, looking at the High Republic era during one of the more prosperous times for the Jedi Order. Along with this announcement comes even more integration in the Star Wars multimedia franchise by including a small cameo in Star Wars Squadrons for players to get in on the High Republic hype. So they did announce it during a live stream on January the 4th. The reveal of the new Star Wars Squadrons customization option does come alongside an announcement for the rollout of a number of different pieces of content for the High Republic. Granted, for long-time Star Wars fans, the whole new rollout of lore-filled content looks like it may bridge the gap on what Disney now considers within the new canon from the extended universe. Sounds very good, and I look forward to it. Again, the news are on my Twitter. January the 2nd, a couple of days ago, was the first time Steam had ever seen 25 million concurrent users. Were you playing that day? Well, I was, in fact, but I wasn't on Steam. It says that many people got in, but the number actually did not set a record. It was a record-breaking holiday season for Steam, as Valve's digital PC storefront reached a new time record for most concurrent users. However, the actual number of people playing games, as opposed to having the Steam client open, did not break a record. According to Steam's own public stats, sometime around January the 2nd, there were more than 25.4 million people logged into Steam at the same time, so that's a new all-time high. Now, this doesn't mean that more than 25 million people were actually playing games. They were just literally using Steam. The majority of accounts were idle on the day the record was broken, according to PC Gamer. The site notes that 7.4 million people were actually playing games on Steam during the record-breaking day. This is not a record, as 8.1 million people were logged into Steam. Well, to tell you the truth, I remember when everyone was on Steam, when everyone was playing PC games. But the times have changed, and we'll have a much greater, well-developed community on consoles, and now also branching out to Android with xCloud and the Cloud Access overall. So the gaming community is becoming very much cross-platform, very diverse, and I'm slightly unhappy with the company is focusing as much on the numbers, because it's all about quality, and if you're providing very high quality content, if you are delivering the services which are operating perfectly on the tech front, you're likely to be acquiring many more followers. But certain trends will persist, and there will be times where people will swing towards certain consoles or certain devices more, and we've seen that recently with the new S model of the new series, new Xbox consoles. Basically, we've seen that what appears to be very popular is its portability, and I find that to be really quite extraordinary. It's a very small device, but it does have all the functions that we enjoyed on all the other Xbox consoles, inclusive of the recent Series X. The only difference there is that it doesn't have that 4/8K compatibility, and it doesn't have a physical drive, which actually is a serious issue. Nevertheless, for myself, as an avid gamer who's frequently up and about, it will be definitely a console that I do want to have, because it's portable, it's tiny, you can take it with you wherever you go, a bit like you take a tablet or your phone, and that makes a very big difference. So some of these trends will define how many people are accessing certain platforms, and I think certainly accessing certain games on Android and iOS is going to be the next big thing. And mark my words, I'm quite certain for platformers, for RPGs, for strategy, turn-based strategy games, that will be the main platform in no time, because you'll be able to access any of these games on your phone or tablet, and you can play them wherever you are, and full well, if you're on a bus, if you're traveling, that's just one of the best things you can do. Not many people can actually read on buses, and when they use public transport, because of the noise levels and everything else, and with me it's the other way around. Actually, I find it very easy to read, and I spent many hours just learning stuff when I was studying a few years back, and it's down to personal preference, but certainly I do foresee a major expansion within that community. I see many more people accessing those games, maybe not necessarily FPS and PvP games, but the other ones that don't require that degree of person-to-person activity. I'll certainly see a major influx of new gamers everywhere, to Android platforms, and particularly to Xbox Cloud. And we have some news on PlayStation. We are getting lots of new titles today with the weekly refresh, and so anybody interested, just hit it up. Go to PlayStation Store, have a look at the titles. I did spot some really good bargains, and I can certainly highly recommend you the exclusives, the Uncharted, God of War, Horizon Zero Dawn, all of these games are offered on a massively discounted price. If you're an Assassin's Creed fan, you want to snap up Odyssey or Origins, maybe you want to buy also Valhalla. It's not really offered on a major reduction, it's a new game, but still definitely worth a shot, and definitely have a look. I've already purchased a number on PlayStation and on Xbox, and I'll have to have a look actually today. I've not had time because the Switch is on Tuesdays, and we'll have a look and find out what other titles they're offering. Just remember, always look for the prices when they bottom out. So the prices bottoming out are giving you this opportunity to acquire quite a large number of games that otherwise are offered on full prices. And to give you an example, I managed to get The Division 2 on Xbox for £3.40, and this is an amazing game. It's like really massive and wonderful, very wide, well-developed open world with PvP, PvE, two joined together environments, loads of story-based missions, loads of seasonal content. £3.43. I mean, honestly, you can't get better than that. But it wasn't offered every single day on that price. You have to be monitoring the sales, and on Xbox you get regular weekly sales and special kind of offers if you are a subscriber to Xbox Live Gold. So there's quite a lot of titles, and some titles keep coming back on very good prices, but you really have to always watch out for the best prices on AAA blockbusters, because these are not offered frequently on reduced prices. And I really, never ever did I buy many more games and enjoy them to the same degree, be it through the streaming services, through my own collection. Just presently have 120 games. 120 games installed presently on my Xbox. 120. I mean, I mean, that speaks for itself. So we've heard that Persona's soundtracks are now going to be finally available on Spotify, and so if you are a Spotify subscriber, particularly if you're on the premium edition, you'll be able to enjoy all the wonderful music from Persona without any adverts and interferences. So coming our way shortly. We've heard from Phil Spencer that they're working around the clock to produce many more new consoles, and so far the sales have been very good. The console's been embraced by the community and taking world by storm really, and we're just looking forward to have a few more games thrown in. And the beauty of the new console is just as remarkable as you would expect it to be, with all those new add-ons. And one of the things that appears to be very popular with the gamers at the moment is the new resume facility, right? So that's something Xbox did not have before, but that allows you to be hopping from one game to another and resume instantly and without any loading periods. And also the loading on the new Xbox console is really much shorter compared to the old, and we've seen for some games the loading times will be reduced to maybe 10 seconds compared to a minute and a half. And if you're playing, that depends on the game obviously, but talking about the biggest blockbusters, and that makes a very big difference if you are doing certain games. I'll give you an example. I was doing a kind of a run on Dead by Daylight the other day, and I have to say the waiting period for matchmaking and in between games was absolutely infinite. It was just, I don't know how, it was just very, very lengthy, and it was putting me off straight away. And I'm not sure whether it's to do with the fact that fewer people are playing the game, which I don't think is the case. It's to do with the way the overall matchmaking works, and selecting people from different parts of the world and everything. And it's just something that will have to be sent to oblivion one way or the other. If you get handsets like the one I'm using at the moment that will be instantly accessing information, then everybody wants to have that sort of handset because they're not wasting time. And the same thing applies to consoles, because you remember, I don't know whether you remember, with PlayStation 1 services, they had at that time a very advanced, a very modern way of loading, where you could see the bar and the game would load quite quickly. But there were some games that are loading for quite some time. So we've gone 25 years forwards, but still the issues with some of the games is persisting. And I think having the tech within the console, making it sure that you can reload the game as quickly as possible, and you can access certain services immediately, as well as having, you know, this new add-on, which is allowing you to resume straight away, is making your gaming experience a lot more enjoyable. So we have some more news coming from Epic. Apparently they are relocating their offices, and they will be having the brand new ones in the US. Let me see where the new headquarters are. Quite curious. Epic is doing really, really well, and that's really truly wonderful. So they are announcing that they purchased an empty retail space in Cary, North Carolina, and they'll be intending to turn this area into an expansive campus. Well, you will know that Epic is most known for Fortnite, but also they have been very well known for Gears of War, and certainly a wonderful, wonderful company with loads of brilliant ideas and new games to come our way as well. Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order developer is working on a new IP. Well, we've heard that recently, and they said that new practical technologies to enable adventuring forever. So if you're familiar with Respawn, the company that's produced Titanfall and Apex, and they also are behind Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order. So they're telling us that the new IP... Oh, let me see. Well, we don't actually have a lot more to say about this, but that they had advertised it, and we need to see how this new IP is going to work for them. Okay, so a bit more on Cyberpunk. We've heard that Cyberpunk fans are finding and restoring cut romance options which are still buried in the game. Well, I have to say I quite like online romance story-based missions. I had the best experience of my life with Mass Effect 2, which was delightful, and I always loved it ever since. I've had some romances in Kingdom Come Deliverance as well, but funny enough, you need to be purchasing a DLC that will enable all the romances to take place within the game, and I have to say they're very explicit. They're almost like a triple X film, so for anyone who's a fan of these types of activities, most highly recommend you Kingdom Come Deliverance. And in fact, I discovered it by watching some of the online videos on YouTube, because I didn't realize that the game had that degree of adult content. But you know, it's there for everyone to explore and to enjoy if you are a fan. And let me see, what is that is said about Cyberpunk. Cyberpunk has a lot of cut content, and since the game's release last month, some fans have been hard at work digging up all the kinds of stuff. Loads of scrap missions, locations and items are still buried in the game's code, but it's the cut romance options that are really getting everyone excited. So prior to launch, CD Projekt Red had said that players could look forward to a range of relationships, from one-night stands to full-blown romance. So sadly, the Cyberpunk 2077 that we got features a very limited number of these options. Well, I'm disappointed. There are just 2 prostitutes to hire in the whole of Night City, both of whom present you with an awkwardly short cinematic, and the game's 4 main romantic interests are locked to the intimacy activities of your main character. Depending on the V that you create at the start of the game and their preference, you're stuck with just one key character to romance to play through. So, you know, well, DLC will be a solution, I think, and if there's anything to be discovered by the fans, we'll find out online very, very shortly. Well, we've seen that the Immortals Phoenix Rising DLC release date has been leaked online, and that's something that Ubisoft are definitely not very happy with. So let me see the release dates for the 3 upcoming DLCs for Immortals Phoenix Rising: A New God, The Lost Gods, and Myths of the Eastern Realm have been leaked. So they said that Immortals Phoenix Rising: New God will be releasing on January the 21st. The second expansion, Immortals Phoenix Rising: The Lost Gods, will be releasing on February the 25th. And the third and final expansion, Immortals Phoenix Rising: Myths of the Eastern Realm, will be releasing on April the 1st. So that's all going to be released within the next couple of months. It's sounding very good. I mean, honestly, are we gonna have enough time to play all the games? I mean, it's just mind-boggling for anyone who's a collector and a fan. There are just too many great games being released and being circulated out there. On the other hand, I really like the idea that with streaming services, you can always catch up with the golden oldies and various other things. And I got to say that anyone who's a subscriber to Xbox Live Gold, we get lots of freebies every month, and it's terrific. You keep getting reminded of the old games, and lots of old games are offered on next to nothing prices, really, through special offers and deals. So make sure you snap them up unless you already had them in your collection. I find it astonishing now. PlayStation 3 and 360 games now could be bought in CX in Britain for as little as 50 pence. So let's say you go with £10 to your local CX, you walk away with 20 games. I mean, £10, 20 games, one dinner, it's extraordinary. Call of Duty Black Ops Cold War's new semi-automatic tactical rifle is causing many headaches. Well, let's see what this is. The new semi-automatic tactical rifle is causing a lot of headaches in Call of Duty Warzone. So now that we have Call of Duty Black Ops Cold War and Warzone merger within Season 1, guns from the former have entered the latter, and the transition has not been really very pretty, particularly for players who go up against DMR-14, Call of Duty's Warzone's latest overpowered rifle. Boo! I've not been at the receiving end of it, but by the sounds of it, it will be very uncanny. So the DMR-14 is a semi-automatic tactical rifle with a high fire rate, little recoil and reliable damage at seemingly any distance. It's these three elements that make the DMR-14 a popular and threatening choice in the Battle Royale game. I'm sure that Spurs and Paphos already had received some of the gifts coming from DMR-14, but we'll catch up later today and we'll find out. It's these three elements that make it headache for most Warzone players. Scouring through the Warzone subreddit pulls dozens of results of players getting laid out in about 3 shots by the DMR. Well, that means 1 shot, 1 kill for me, considering my lag. Even players who are fully armored get melted by the gun. Those at pretty far distances also have little to no chance of surviving the DMR-14's barrage. Until co-developers Raven Software and Treyarch implement a nerf of some kind to decrease its magazine, reduce its damage or something to that effect, many Warzone players have flocked to the newly added and equally powerful MAC-10 submachine gun to counter the DMR-14's damage. Conversely, players also use both guns in a single loadout with the Overkill perk to wreak further mayhem across Warzone's recently released Rebirth Island and Verdansk. In other Warzone news, the final mission of the game wraps up the nuclear plotline with an unlockable cutscene. Players simply need to collect every piece of intel currently available in Warzone to unlock the final cinematic and see the conclusion of the War Room mission. Well, I need to really collect all of that, really. So that's gonna be my next creed, my next task in here. Alright, so I think that's the news. We have actually a few more news on my Twitter if you're interested. These are related to the new Sony consoles. We also heard that Sony will discontinue production of PlayStation 4 very shortly. GTA Online trick lets players free roam in Cayo Perico, so you can learn all about it on my Twitter as well. We have a list of most anticipated games. I think we should certainly say that Horizons 2 is one of those, and in the same way as The Last of Us 2 was, for the last year on Sony PlayStation. And we've heard from Jeff Keighley that Christopher Nolan is very keen on producing a video game in addition to his wonderful cinematic masterpieces. I'm absolutely astonishingly curious to find out what the game is going to be, whether it will be based on one of his films or not, so we'll find out. And then we've heard that Naya developer teases 2021 announcements, and it's possible that we'll have some new add-ons there. See if there's anything else. I think that's about it for today, and if you still want to be finding out more about our industry-based news, absolutely head to my Twitter, have a look in there, and you will be more than quickly familiarized with everything that's been happening in our industry. So bear with me. Where are we? Right, so these were the news for today, and today is Tuesday, 5th of January. Nearly forgot. And I've got to say, I really slept very heavily, and for some reason I think that the ginger that I've been drinking in the last few days kept me a bit well, awake longer than expected, and my day started a bit later than usual today, and therefore we are running a bit late with my streams. I can see I've run over time here on our daily news bulletin, but nevertheless, the reason for that is we had lots of content coming in from our community, quite a few questions. Took time really to answer everyone who was sending us their thoughts and views, and thanks yet again to everyone taking time to write, and very glad to see that people are watching my podcasts and streams through playback, and playback is accessible through a variety of different platforms, and most of the times when I get messages, they actually come in after people watched our playback, so, and literally from any corner of the planet, which is surprising. We had messages coming in from, Singapore and Tunisia, Iran, Russia, Czech Republic, from all sorts of places. So that's really wonderful, and thank you for contributing. As I said, this is our new slot called Daily News Bulletins. We'll have it every single day. On average, it'll last about 90 minutes, but 60 minutes, I should say, and sometimes we'll stretch it for a bit longer if there are lots of community questions coming in, which was the case obviously overnight, and it will comprise the activity from our community as well as the news coming from the industry. So that's exactly how we're going to do it. So hope you enjoyed all we talked about. Hope you found some of the tips and ideas useful, and you will see that through questions that people raise, we'll be able to provide you with lots of different pointers, ideas and views on what to do if you want to be a Twitch streamer. In fact, I've had quite a number coming in which were more sort of based on the tech and a few other bits and pieces, which I think is perhaps a bit boring for people to listen to in here, and I've been responding to those people individually. But the questions that concern the overall setup, the mindset, how we do it, certainly are very much of interest to everyone. So we talked about that both yesterday and today. Hope you find some of the tips of interest. If you have any other questions, just feel free to email and ask for more, and we'll carry on really. Maybe if there are some groups of people who want to be debating this live online, hit me up with a message. We'll set it up here in a separate podcast, and then we'll basically talk live online. Talking live online and providing highly interesting content is going to be of great interest to the newbies and veterans alike, so always want to invite people to join us. Right, so I need to take a short break. After that, we'll carry on with Night Call, and one of my favorite indie discoveries of last year, a French indie game that has been present on Xbox Game Pass already for some time. I want to really play it and complete it before it goes, and we'll introduce it next. So all that is to follow in about 5 minutes will be Night Call based and Night Call related. Stay with us. This news bulletin broadcast for today is about to end, so we'll discontinue with this broadcast and we'll carry on with another, which is going to be dedicated to our DRBMiller introducing session. As said, Night Call is the next big thing here, so stay with us. We'll be back in 5.